Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa of the Golden Ray Center and the Rose Will Mystery School. And today is October 15th, the day after the Ring of Fire solar eclipse. And we are gathering here for our October 10th Venus Morning Star activation of the third eye chakra. We call this the portal of perception. And through this activation, also we will be doing later a ceremony to bring online that 15th strand of DNA. Now that will be a private ceremony. So those of you that are tier 2 members of Patreon, you will only see this beginning part, which is the teaching part. So just letting you know again what's going on here. So we're going to start, getting ahead of myself here. We're going to start here as always with this template. And I just want to take a moment to remind you that this is the template that Yeshua gave to me. I think it was right at or right after the resurrection point of the Inanna underworld phase for the Gemini goddess journey. And this coincided with Maureen and I recognizing two things. One, that the myth of Inanna no longer seemed to be relevant for the Venus goddess synodic cycle journey. And two, that the hero's journey no longer seemed to be relevant for the sacred masculine's synodic cycle journey. And it was with those revelations that we were discussing that, boom, Yeshua came in, gave me this template and explained to me that, yes, we had absolutely tapped into this evolved template, and here it is. And so on October 10th, as I said, we had the activation of the third eye chakra. Now, with this template, we're tapping into the Sophia Christ consciousness in a way that most people probably don't even understand. And even for myself, it becomes more and more clear as we work with this template, what's in fact happening. So right now at this third eye activation, what we are being given access to is this realm of the Son aspect of Christ. Remember that Christ as a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we are being given access to this realm of the Son aspect of Christ. You could think of it as a dimensional reality, perhaps, if that helps you. And through that realm, we receive access to spiritual gifts of the Christ. And this particular spiritual gift is what's known as Shanti consciousness. Shanti is a Sanskrit word that means peace. And Shanti consciousness is love in thought. And as I indicate here, we are activating that 15th strand of DNA. So next month, when we have the activation at the throat chakra, you see that we will be given access to the Holy Spirit aspect of Christ. So these are windows of access. They're not written in stone, because we know everything is happening in the eternal now. We can access any of these realms at any time. This window, of course, runs from October 10th through November 8th. So just kind of giving you a little bit more in-depth feel for the significance of this template that Yeshua gave me as we're going through this first phase of the Venus journey, the descent phase, also known as the morning star phase. So here we are on October 10th. We had that gate activation at the third eye chakra. We know when it's happening by looking to the skies. Venus and the moon are standing in the same place. And this activation took place at 1 degree of Virgo. So let's see what that looks like in terms of the chart. Here we go. This is really incredible because of all of the activations and all of the charts that I've looked at since that Gemini goddess journey. This is the first chart that has had the most simple, simple aspects, I would say, in the sky. And so we look here and we see that we've got Venus and Moon together at 1 degree, 21 minutes of Virgo. And standing right next to them is Lilith at 0 degrees, 47 minutes. We round that up to 1 degree. So, you know, she's less than a degree away from the moon and Venus. Now, we know Lilith to be a sovereignty goddess. And in particular, for this entire Leo goddess journey, Lilith is holding the place for Thekla. I did a whole video around Thekla. But what I want to say to you today to remind you about the frequencies that Thekla is adding to this portal of perception activation is that when Paul would not baptize her, she called upon the sovereignty of her own divine self, her own Christed self, her own inner Christos Sophia, and in the name of Christ baptized herself. This is a huge frequency that's being contributed to this conjunction point here at the third eye. I'll speak to it more in just a minute. But what we see is that the three of them are standing across the sky from Saturnia, who is retrograde in Pisces at about 1 degree, 1 minute. And she is closely aspected to the Magdalene, who is also retrograde at 28 degrees, 41 minutes, Aquarius, 29 degrees. So, you know, we're talking a couple of degrees, maybe 2.5 degrees. So this is significant because it brings in the frequencies of Aquarius where the Magdalene is, and it brings in the frequencies of Pisces where Saturnia is. And again, I'm going to speak to that in another slide. Just want you to see what's going on here. Now, at this 15th strand of DNA activation, this activation is falling under the influence of, and I'm going to stop my share so I can show this to you. It's falling under the influence of this ancient star sign, the Raven, also known as Corvus. And what's interesting about the Raven is it's located in the sky next to the sea serpent. And we've already had activations related to the stars of the sea serpent. And it's also very close to what's known as the cup. And through mythology, even could refer to the Holy Grail. And we've had activations on this journey already related to the stars in the cup. And so now we have the Raven. And I don't want to go through too much mythology here, but the mythology says that the reason that these three signs are located so closely together has to do with their mythology related to Apollo. So you can go and you can look that up for yourself if you're interested. So let me come back to the screen, to the slides. So the two stars of the raven that are involved in sharing the frequencies of their star power with this 15th strand DNA activation are Menkar and Algorab, which is what I've highlighted over here. And we can see that they are kind of sandwiched between Mercury, the cosmic messenger, and of course the sun. And I just had an aha today as I was looking at this that might seem obvious, but you've got to understand that I just follow where Sophia leads me. And sometimes I get the ahas about why it's so obvious later. And this is one of them. What I did already know is that all of these stars from the ancient star signs that we are working with and that are integral to these DNA activations is that they are closely conjunct the sun, which is why when you're looking at your solar return chart or your natal chart, whatever star next to your sun is your ruling star. So I knew that as like a piece of data, so to speak. But the wisdom that I received from Sophia today is the reason why she brought this information to me. I don't even know how many months before we completed the Capricorn sovereignty goddess cycle is because the Leo goddess journey is ruled by the sun, and therefore the stars conjunct the sun are an integral part of the unfolding of this Leo goddess journey. So just wanted to bring that into your awareness if you, like me, had not already made that connection. So that's what the stars look like, or what the chart looks like in the sky in terms of the aspects here. So there's really one significant aspect. It's an opposition. We know with oppositions, I'm just going to remind you this, that, it's like a polarity, but what's happening is that the frequencies of the luminary bodies on both sides are blending together in order to create something brand new up here at a higher vibrational set point. And this is significant because, as we've discovered in doing the 13th and 14th strands of DNA activation, that the 12th, 13th, and 14th strands of activation had events that all happened in Leo. They were very much a part of this awakened divine heart space. The 12th strand of DNA is the one that awakened that divine heart space within us. And you'll recall from videos that I did that are on Patreon, for several months prior to that, there were aspects in the sky that was preparing us to align and calibrate between our 3D compassionate heart space and this awakened divine heart space. It was that metamorphic seed point that brought the awakened divine heart space online. And so that 12th strand with the 13th and 14th strands are very much tied together, which is not exactly the right word that I want to use. But there is a weaving between them that seems to bridge us from this physical body of the 12 strands of DNA coming online to this more multi-dimensional place within our awakened divine heart space, where with the rest of these strands of DNA are coming online to prepare us for, again, bridging is probably the word I want to use, bridging us from our humanity to our divinity, which happens with the next Pisces unity consciousness Leo got, Pisces unity consciousness, Venus synodic cycle at that 33rd strand of DNA. So the reason I gave you all of that is because this 15th strand of DNA is kind of standing itself apart from what was going on with the 12th, 13th, and 14th strands of DNA that all happened within Leo, that awakened divine heart space. And that this opposition here is showing us, okay, now we're moving forward, we're moving into a higher frequency to manifest something new now that we're, not well into, but have made our way into this Leo goddess journey. So I just wanted to share that piece with you too. And so I want to just point out to you what the raven corvus looks like in the sky. This is what its astrological configuration is in the sky. And let's talk about this constellation a little bit. I love this because, we've brought in this alchemical piece that is very necessary as we are being alchemized from our human self into our divine self over this Leo goddess journey. And just as I said that this 15th strand DNA is kind of separating itself out, differentiating itself, I would say, from the 12th through the 14th strands, this constellation is even showing us how that's happening. So what we know here is that high-flying and far-seeing birds symbolize the soul. Well, of course, the soul is our divine self. And it also symbolizes the faculty of thought in man. And in nearly all mythology, the raven, or these birds, are the gods' eyes and their messengers, keeping them in touch with life on earth and linking man to the divine. Okay? Now remember, this is all an allegory, but we can very definitely see through here that this is a key step forward in this human part of ourself starting to be alchemized, which it will happen over these next strands of DNA, 15th through 34th strands, until the 33rd strand, when our divine self fully comes, let's say, actualized. So the raven, thanks to its black feathers, stands for the ability to see that which is as yet hidden and shrouded in darkness, because it has not yet happened. And so this again goes back to that alchemy piece, even the shamanic piece, where you have this ability to move between worlds, from this world to the other world, which may be the divine realm. It may be what's known as the underworld, where all of this alchemy takes place. And it goes on to say, and of course, all of this is in the book of the ancient star signs that I've referenced on many occasions. The raven, which symbolized the gods' prophetic powers, has been regarded as a bringer of bad tidings, because as time went on, the powers of intuition and prophecy came to be seen as the enemies of reason rather than as true insights, and so were feared as sinister and dark, like the raven's feathers. And so what we see here is how the patriarchy started to infiltrate the wisdom around the star and around the raven, because really why they may have explained it away as an enemy of reason through the church and through academia, whatever other power structures they had, what they were really trying to shut down was access to the divine self. And the way that they do that is by demonizing your own power to be in touch with your divine self. And then finally, we see here that for the Native Americans, the raven is a symbol for the Great Spirit. Well, there you go. And while in the Bible, it stands for God's providence, as the ravens fed Elijah in the desert. But remember, they didn't want humanity having direct access with God, the source of creation, the Great Spirit. They wanted to usurp that power for themselves and control that for themselves. So this is an interesting history around this constellation that really does tie into this portal of perception. Your own powers of intuition, your own prophetic powers, your own ability to perceive that which you are receiving from the divine. And so let's look at the two stars very quickly that are influencing this activation by sharing the light frequencies of their star power with this portal of perception activation. So the first one is Algorab, and they tell us that it's located at the tip of an outstretched wing in the raven, and we can see that. Let me just go back. Right. Well, it doesn't look like it in this. It looks kind of backwards, but because this is the outstretched wing, maybe if you changed the plane, it would be more on that wing. Okay. What we see here is that this star portends giving the power of summoning or driving away evil spirits and protection from winds and the malice of men and devils. So here again, we've got this kind of crossover between, is this really a benefic influence or is it an evil influence? But if it's giving you the power to summon and protect, then we know that the patriarchy is going to want to somehow invert that to make it fearful to engage these frequencies. Now, if you're born between September 29th and October 11th, then this is one of your personal stars that is influencing you throughout your life. We see that it's located specifically at 13 degrees and 46 minutes of Libra. Most importantly, and I think that this is why we've got this kind of struggle over what's happening with these frequencies. Algorab is one of the 15. Now think of all of the stars in our galaxy. And that doesn't even include all the other however many billions of galaxies. Just in our galaxy, Algorab is one of the 15 Bahenian fixed stars. Okay, so what are the Bahenian fixed stars? Well, what we find here is that the Bahenian fixed stars are a selection of 15 stars considered especially useful for magical applications in the medieval astrology of Europe and the Arab world. magical applications. Well, this goes back to Scorpio frequencies, which is tied into alchemy. Alchemy was also known as a kind of magic. The names of these stars derive from Arabic Baman, which I guess means root. So the root names of the stars are Arabic, as each was considered a source of astrological power for one or more planets. This is what it comes down to. It's the power of this star that humanity was aware of, especially the natives people, and of course the alchemists. They knew of this power, and the patriarchy was trying to remove humanity from its power by creating fear around it. Now, this person, whom I've never heard of before, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, discussed these Bohemian fixed stars in his 3 books of occult philosophy. So occult has to do with mystery, has to do with magic, has to do with alchemy, goes back to those Scorpio frequencies. In his book 2 is where he discusses them. And I guess Bohemi is the singular form of Bohemius. He describes their magical workings and Kabbalistic symbols. If you don't understand what Kabbalah is, it's the esoteric part of Judaism. It's the esoteric wisdom of Judaism. And most religions have an esoteric branch. The Gnostics had a branch, like the Essenes, right, that were very esoteric. Even Christianity has a esoteric branch. They are studying the mysteries that were considered to be too powerful to have available to the common man. He attributed these magical workings and Kabbalistic symbols to Hermes Trismegistus. Not sure how to pronounce his name, but we've talked about Hermes Trismegistus in terms of the alchemy that we are doing now through this journey that goes back to the Emerald Tablet. So I told you from the beginning, this is all alchemical. And so what we see here also is that the true origin remains unknown, but this gentleman, Sir Wallace Budge, suspects that there is a possible Sumerian source. I don't know, that's just anecdotal. The big piece here is the alchemical piece and the power of this star to alchemize. Okay. The next star that's involved here is Menkar. And they say that this star marks the raven's eye. Clearly from the image that we saw before, let me go back again so that you can see it. This does not look like the raven's eye. It would be up here. So, you know, this is how they've superimposed this raven on this. Maybe the raven should be flipped over so that his beak is over here. Can't always trust the images that you get. To me, that's my sense, is that this raven needs to be flipped over 180 degrees so that the eye is here. And then, yes, Algorab up here is on an outstretched wing. Okay. It is located at 11 degrees, 59 minutes of Libra, almost at 12 degrees, right? One more minute, it would be at 12 degrees. It marks the raven's eye. This is significant because this is the portal of perception, activation, the third eye chakra. And what's fascinating to me is there is absolutely nothing that I could find either in the book where this information is coming from, or by doing searches online, that gives you any more information about this star. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that this is, and I'm looking here for the right word. Maybe it's on the previous slide. The ability to see that which is as yet hidden and shrouded in darkness because it has not happened. I think that that relates specifically to Menkar. And I think it also relates specifically to this portal of perception, the third eye. It is through the third eye that you can see what has not yet happened, what is shrouded. Okay. That's my perception. That's what I receive around this. I would encourage you to contemplate this question about why isn't there any more information about this star published out there? But this goes back to the occult, to the mysteries, okay, around all of this. So those are the stars that are sharing their star power, the frequencies of their star power with this 15th strand of DNA activation. So let's look at, well, okay, well, let's put all this together. What is all of this about? And I was very clearly given this from Sophia. At this portal of perception activation and this 15th strand of DNA activation, we are being given the ability to see ourselves as manifestations of the Sophia Christ consciousness, so that we will then be able to use our divine eminence to create in the name of Christ. Think about what Thekla did. She called on her own divine sovereignty, her own divine eminence, on her own Christed self, and baptized herself in the name of Christ. Where is this happening? This is happening on Virgo, who stands across from Virgo, Saturnia in Pisces. She is the gatekeeper that lets everything that's going to be made manifest in this reality come through from out there. Where is the out there in Pisces? It's the divine realm. It's the unified source field. This is the beginning. This is how this strand of DNA is differentiating itself from the 12th, 13th, and 14th strands. This is the beginning of us becoming to realize ourselves as divine beings. This goes back to the gifts, the spiritual gifts and the kites of those activations, 12th, 13th, and 14th, and the ones even before then, where we said that the regular man is going to look upon our creations, what we can manifest, in awe as miraculous. But we know they aren't miraculous. They're just gifts of the divine, the Christed self, which Yeshua himself embodied. So this is a huge activation at this point in our journey. So at this point, I want to go ahead and introduce you back to Maureen, who is going to bring in the alchemical piece related to this, as she will be doing through our journey. And we will start here. So before we do this, actually, let me stop the share. And let me just ask everybody, because it's a lot to take in what I just talked about. Does anybody have any questions that require clarity? Does anybody have any ahas that they received around what I was sharing that would be really wonderful to add to the conversation? Anything at all, please speak up. Yes, Karen.
Well, I noted your posting about watching Harry Potter. And as you brought up what are the words here? The birds that fly or whatever. That initial scene in the movie where those, I think they were owls.
Yes.
They all came, they brought all those letters and everything. And I haven't watched this in years. And it was just like, oh my God, I have to watch the whole damn series now.
Yes. Yes. And in
Really
fact,
going to be
as you
interesting.
say that, you're going to see that Maureen and I had a discussion about that. And yes, 7 chakras, 7 movies. We're going to be doing 1 movie for each chakra. So yes.
How fun. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the piece about the owls, because what are they? High flying and far seeing birds. And the owls absolutely qualify.
Yeah.
One of those kinds of birds. And I never even put it together, but you're absolutely right on. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. The other thing that's come to my mind is that this process is, maybe it's obvious to everybody else, but I now really get the feeling, the sensation, even the purpose that we are rewiring and rehooking our DNA, which is, it hooks up to our blueprint, our soul blueprint, and connects us to source, which anyway, that's becoming clear to me now.
Yes. Yes. And from the beginning of this, back in the Capricorn goddess journey, you'll remember the language that I used, that all of the DNA is still online in our divine template. The dark ones could not mess with that. And so the process that we've been going through in this activation is repairing, right? Pairing the DNA strand in our divine template with the DNA strand in our physical body that was taken offline. So we're repairing them, we're reconnecting them, we're regenerating that connection, reactivating that connection. That's exactly what we have been doing and what we're continuing to do.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Anybody else have any insights they'd like to share and add to the conversation?
You know, I am just amazed, because alchemy is the art of alchemy, which is ancient, is so related to this work. And, you know, we had talked about trying to bring in alchemy during the Gemini cycle, I think.
Yes, it was.
And it just didn't come. It just wasn't there. And I knew that I wanted to do it, but I couldn't see a step. I couldn't see the first step. And it just seems so obvious now that we are in a position to bring alchemy into our work. It's a little bit amazing to me, and you know how closely aligned they are. And yeah, it's just, you know, during your presentation, I just kept getting these, you know, hits like, yeah, that's alchemy. That's really it. You know, that's how we're dealing. And I should know that, but yet, you know, it isn't until this moment, this what we're doing with the Galactic Project, that I understand this is where alchemy belongs. This is why it wasn't obvious where to start during the Gemini circle. We hadn't come far enough yet, but now we have, and we're ready. So that's amazing to me.
It is amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Maureen, in terms of the timing piece, because I can see it now like you do. Absolutely, we weren't ready then to bring it forward. And even now, it wasn't like a conscious, oh, let's bring this forward. it unfolded, it revealed itself to us that
Yes.
it was like, of course we have to do this now, because it was showing us that it was time. And even though we didn't really understand why it was time, we followed the guidance, and now we are seeing why it was time. We're getting
Right.
the ahas.
We are, every one of us, and it's
Yeah.
really unique,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Anything else before I switch back to the slides? Okay.
I'm going to add one more thing
Sure.
real quick.
Go ahead.
Every engagement I have with this process, you know, with you and this group, it's just so validating that I'm in the right place at the right time, and it's awakened things in me that has prompted me to maybe clear the slate for my own personal inner journey. And I've had to let go of a lot of distractions so that I could really focus on taking care of personal business. So it's kind of exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, here we go. And we're always going to start here with Maria Prophetessa's axiom, because this is really the foundational piece, and I'll let Maureen take over from here.
Yep. This is the download that Maria Prophetessa was given, and it is probably her most important contribution to alchemy. One becomes two, two becomes three, and out of the third comes the one as the fourth. And we now know that the fourth is divine love, combination of Sophia and Christ consciousness. I think Jung was looking at it, at Carl Jung. He believed that, I mean, he studied this for 30 years, and he believed that it was the truth of it was the development of the human. So although he was involved with psychoanalysis, he thought it was, you know, a human development. One is the baby, and the baby becomes two when the baby realizes there's someone out there that taking care of me, and then three, and out of the third comes the fourth, which is what he called quaternity. Instead of trinity, he called it quaternity. But we know it is more than that, even. And I don't want to say that I'm more aware of this than he was. He is, you know, brilliant. He's Carl Jung. And I'm not saying he was wrong, but I am just saying that from our perspective, we are looking at it as the combining of Sophia and Christ to the love frequency. And that's a little different, I think, way to proceed with it. Okay. So just to review, if any of you have looked up the Emerald Tablet, it is a short read. It is a very short read. And it holds within it the entire study of what alchemy is. And I thought about that for a long time. Now, how could that be in this short thing? Well, the words, the power of words, the power of vibration. Each word, each letter has a vibration. So when you read it, you're reading it on all different levels. And it is the entire body of information. Everything you need to know about alchemy is held within the Emerald Tablet. And that kind of amazing to me. It is, I was reading a bit about alchemy from E.J. Homeyard, MD. And she said, in alchemy, as in magic, the spiritual and the physical are never conceived as opposites, but rather the physical is seen as a reflection of its spiritual essence. So as within, so without. And you're going to be reminded of that time and time again as you go through your process. It is the great work. It is the magnum opus. And I think it's important to remember to use the vocabulary that, you know, they have used for centuries when you work with alchemy, because they each carry their own body of knowledge, their own vibration, and what has come before. So it's important. And that brings me to prima materia, which you are working with. That is the mystical, chaotic substance which animates all of the cosmos. It has been likened to the void, and we've all heard the expression of the void as where things begin. It is a chaotic place where it is manifested from chaos into an organized thought process. And that's prima materia. And that's going to get deeper. The more you work with these things, they're going to get deeper. You're going to go at them at a different level. It will never be the same. This will meet you where you are. And each time you will be at a deeper level. So it will become to mean something more to you than what you've understood about it before when it comes to your personal awareness. Okay, so I think that we're ready for is there any more you have to say, Sophia, Mona Lisa, or anybody about this? Anything?
That was brilliant. I'm just going to take this opportunity to remind you to let me know when you're ready for the next slide.
Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, I think we're ready. Okay, here's the steps. There are 7. Some have said 4, some have said 12, but we're going with 7. Calcination, the burning. Dissolution, the flooding, the water. Separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, and coagulation. Okay.
So just want to remind everybody that we're going through all 7 of these steps at each gate activation, at each chakra activation. So today, at the portal of perception, the third eye chakra. The third eye chakra now begins this journey at calcination. And the crown chakra, which was activated last month, now moves on to dissolution. And so you're going to see this as we go through the rest of these slides.
Okay.
Whoops,
And
sorry, got ahead of myself. Just a second here.
There.
Let me move.
Isn't it? That's where we are, I think.
Trying to find a place to put this. Okay.
Okay, this is a person that in my research came up. Her name is Marianne Atwood. She is the daughter. She's a 19th century spiritual alchemist. Her father was Thomas South, who was a spiritual researcher. And she wrote, her birth was 1817 and she died in 1910. So she's one of the most important of that century. And there were so many similarities between the two and their work that I thought maybe Maria Prophetessa came back as Marianne Atwood to continue her work. Of course, I don't know that. It was just an impression, a feeling I had. But she wrote, and this is what really anchored me to this woman. Alchemy is a universal art of vital chemistry, which by fermenting the human spirit, purifies and finally dissolves it. Alchemy is philosophy. It is the philosophy of finding the Sophia in the mind. And I thought, oh yeah, this is our girl. You know, she's just really, really a brilliant alchemist. And when I looked at these two images, which Sophia Mona Lisa, thank you for putting them together so we can compare. You'll notice that there are some similarities. Now, this wasn't done on purpose. It is just kind of a universal clue that lets us know these two are somehow related, and in their work, and at the very least. So you see the cap, it is similar to the cap that Maria Prophetessa has on. You see the shrug around the shoulders. They both have, you know, this shoulder shrug that covers them, and then Maria Prophetessa has on a longer cape, but the shrug around the shoulders is very similar. And then the other thing that I noticed that was interesting to me is look at their left hands. I mean, their right hands. Look at their right hands. They are in identical position. Maria has her finger out, and she's holding her cloak. And Marianne Atwood has her finger out, and she is pointing to her book. I thought that was pretty interesting that they had that same position of their hands. So I'm going to continue to read what she wrote. She wrote this book. It is called A Suggestive Inquiry into the Hermetic Mystery.
Let me stop the share so we can see that, and if you'll give us the title again. Here,
This is what it looks like.
Change the view to speaker view, so when you read the title, we'll see it. Go ahead.
Okay, A Suggestive Inquiry into the Hermetic Mystery. Now, this book, she wrote it, but she collaborated with her father on the publishing of it, Thomas South. And he got it to the publisher for her and did all the groundwork for having it published, which the publisher was happy to do. And then he read it. He had not read it prior to that. And after he read it, he went, nope, this is not going to work. We're not going to publish this. He got all the copies that had been printed so far. He stopped the publishing of this book, and he said, no, the world is not ready to have this hidden information. So the book was not published at the time it was meant to. It wasn't until later that another woman came to her and said, I think I'd like to see your book published. I would like to have others have access to this information. And she acquiesced to that. She said, okay. So it was only given to a few at that time. But nonetheless, the story of the book is fascinating to me. And of course, everybody wants to read it now. What's so hidden in there, you know? But I tell you, she writes very, 1800s. So it's not like we use language. She uses it differently. So I have to look words up. It's a very slow read, and it feels, it's not a light read by any means, but I am going to go through it and see if I can't determine what it is, that was hidden for so long and it's now available to us, thank goodness. And we're ready to hear what she has to say. Yeah. Okay. I think it's also interesting that in Mary Atwood's quote that you see here beside, that she doesn't say the steps in order. Fermentation isn't until down; it's almost at the end, and the purification comes to the top. I mean, it's just not in order. She's telling you what happens. It does happen, but not the order that it happens. And alchemists were very, very protective of the steps because they had to be done in order. Although they go at different levels at each step. Okay, anything else?
So that
Question?
was like the 19th century version of disinformation, right?
Exactly. It went back centuries. And alchemists let people think it was about lead into gold
Yeah,
because that led them down the wrong path.
right.
They didn't want this knowledge to be known to everyone because they felt, as did her father, that this would be used against people. And of course, I think probably it would have.
Right.
When you realize that you can control people with this knowledge rather than having them experience it on their own.
Right. And be liberated by it.
And be liberated. And a lot of people are not quite ready to be liberated. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is exactly right.
Are you ready for the next slide?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the path we're following. It is spiral. And at each level, at each time we go around, you're going to find yourself at a deeper understanding. So although you'll be doing calcination at each step along the way, you'll be doing dissolution at the steps along the way, it will get deeper, and it will continue to unfold to you things that you have not been aware of. It is the intent that you become aware of all those things that hold you back from knowing your soul's story, what it is that your soul holds from all of its experience. And each time you do this, you will go deeper, and then you will get to the magnum opus, the philosopher's stone, the truth about self. We probably won't get there in this lifetime, but over the soul's journey, you'll get closer and closer. Okay, any questions?
Just want to add that this image reminds us that within each alchemical process, there are spirals within spirals, processes within processes. And of course, as we start talking about Harry Potter as a series in each individual movie, you're going to start to recognize that. It all comes back to this spiral. So while there is a process within the first movie, it's only one part of the process that happens over the 7 movies or all of the books. So this is another purpose of this image, to remind you, cycles within cycles, spirals within spirals.
Yep.
chemical
And J.K.
process.
Rowling understood this. She knew
Yes.
this. And that's why she each book, you get deeper. You get deeper into what's going on, really, until finally in the end, well, we won't go there because that's a long way off, but she understood this process herself very well. And it was the download, as I've said before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay, this is a chart Sophia Mona Lisa made for us so we can kind of follow our journey. So I'll just let you explain it. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, sweetheart. So I wanted to try to create a visual image for you to understand what we've been describing through this descent journey. So each of the 7 steps. So we've got the steps here, the 7 steps. And they're color coded, of course. And so we see that with the crown chakra, we're going to be able to go through all 7 steps by the time we reach the Earth Star chakra, which is where from the Earth Star chakra, we descend into the Inanna underworld, that death by intent. And at the third eye chakra, because there are 8 gates, it'll be at that Earth star chakra that we will be completing all of those 7 steps. So these are the only 2 chakras where we'll have been able to go through all of the 7 steps of the alchemical process. And so with the throat chakra, we'll get through 6 of them. With the heart chakra, we get through 5 of them. With the solar plexus chakra, we get through 4 of them. With the sacral chakra, we get through 3 of them. And with the root chakra, only 2. So where we are now with the crown chakra dissolution, that's as far as we're going to get through to the root chakra. Now, Maureen and I have discussed, okay, well, how do these other chakras complete this alchemical process? We don't have the answer to that. As you know, stuff gets revealed to us whenever it's ready to be revealed to us. And I suspect that somewhere between descending into the Inanna underworld and that resurrection point, somewhere in that time frame, each of these chakras will be able to complete the full process. Because by the time the Leo goddess rises, and she will rise at the root chakra, we're going to be initiating this whole process again. It's a suspicion. It may not unfold that way. We're actually waiting to see ourselves. So is there anything around that, Maureen, you want to add to?
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, see, the ego wants to know exactly what we're going to do. We're working with our egos. That's what we're trying to dismantle here. And so when you look at that root chakra, we're only going to have 2. Well, okay, so explain to me now, please, how in the world we're going to get the rest of it. I want to know right now. But that's one of the things we have to let go of. The need to know. That's an ego thing. And that's what we're dismantling to get to the truth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right now we don't need to know. We only need to know what we're working with. We're working with the crown chakra and the third eye and 2 steps, calcination and dissolution. And that's enough for now.
And of course, that ties us back to the ever unfolding mystery. It's a mystery. I mean, maybe this is a good time, Maureen, for you to speak to that story that you were sharing with me about the conversation with Maria Prophetessa during our immersive that shows that this is an eternal unfolding of a mystery.
Yeah, exactly. We were attempting to contact her through our channel, Carol, and we knew that we wanted her input into our journey through alchemy. But at the time, she seemed reluctant, is a good word maybe, to share. But what she did was, she just went, shh, I'm researching. And so we thought, okay, she's not wanting us to break into her world. But that's not what that was about. I've come to another conclusion about that, and that may change, as it will, as we get deeper. I think she was showing us very clearly that this is an ongoing process. I mean, she lived in the 1st to 3rd, in their centuries. So, this before Christ. And yeah, no, she lived in the 1st, 3rd century after. But she hasn't stopped researching. Even now, she's researching. Her soul is continuing to do work. And I think that was her message, one of them. We're not ever done with this. She wanted that to be very clear. And then she whispered to us, we asked, what are you working on? And she said, shh, DNA. She whispered it, DNA. And that's what we're working with. So I don't think that we were kind of defensive about it, like, well, okay, then, you're turning your back on us. But that's not at all what she was doing. Not at all. So I think it's real interesting, to understand that she is with us. She is helping. I know she's helping. And she's drew me to Marianne Atwood, maybe because it's her, or maybe because she just thinks it would be a good woman, to study, to learn from. And either way is fine. We're there. But it's real interesting to me how she comes through. And she is protective of the integrity of the study of alchemy. And that's important to know.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really cool, really super cool. Because we were a little defensive, weren't we?
Oh, we were, definitely. We thought she was just turning her back on us, like she figured we weren't good enough or something, but that wasn't it at all.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You ready for the next slide, sweetheart?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, so at the crown chakra, you have major lists of things that you are aware of that stand in the way of your sovereignty. At this level, it's deep, but it's not as deep as it's going to get. So understand that each thing you come up with has levels underneath it, and you'll be going deeper and deeper and deeper. And the crown chakra is the only one that we will complete through the underworld of this journey. We will have gone through all the steps. And so I expect that there will be a lot of awareness around this, your sovereignty, that is like aha, is like eureka. It's really going to come more clear to you what has stopped you from being a sovereign soul or a sovereign human with a soul. The soul has to learn sovereignty too, I guess. I don't know, but I assume that that's the journey. Otherwise, why would we bother to reincarnate, in places where we have to go through all of this? So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Okay, so are there any questions about your burning bowl ceremonies, or when you want to do that? I mean, you can do that anytime.
Let me stop the share so that anybody who wants to address this.
Yeah.
And quickly, I just want to say the reason why Maureen is referencing sovereignty is to remind you that the crown chakra is known as the portal of authority. And of course, that has to do with your sovereignty, or as I've been using the phrase, your self-eminence.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's right. I think what I'm going to do is set up, I'm going to create a reference charts under calcination, what it is, what it does, what to consider. And that will probably change as we go on. But I mean, I may add things to it as we get deeper into this. But I just think it would be easier if you had something to reference, because I don't have slides yet. That I may create some. I'm trying to learn my program, but but it will be good for you to have something to reference when you're working with calcination, and exactly what it does, and you know, that it's important to understand nothing new can come forward unless the old is burned and or destroyed, taken down. And that's an ongoing process. So if you had something to refer to, I think it would help.
And so I just want to tie this back where you've asked us to keep a list of the shadow pieces that came up and to write them down, and that we were going to burn them. And the reason that you were asked to do that is because calcination as a first step is purification by fire.
That's right.
That's why we're burning them. Dissolution, which is where we're at now with the crown chakra, is purification by water. That's why she's asking you to take the water that was charged with the ring of fire solar eclipse frequencies to mix that with the ashes, so that you can see how what she's asking us to do in these experiential steps ties back to the underlying meanings of the steps that we're in. Is that correct, Maureen?
Yes, absolutely. And this is a good place to enter the quote from, well, it's not a quote, it's a download that Maria Prophetessa gave to me concerning the portal of authority. There can be no personal authority unless through calcination, all downloads of inferiority are burned and turned to ashes. Now, I know that that was her, because that's not how I'd have said that, for one thing. And she used the word inferior, which connects into Mercury. And so she's showing us the importance of words, using the right words, and exactly what needs to be done at calcination at the crown chakra. So I will include that too in my papers to you, so you will have that to reference. And I think that the second thing she brought to me was Marianne Atwood. So I think truly she is with us, and she will. I have to ask that she not go too fast, because this is overwhelming to me, and I can get really, really overwhelmed, you know, with all this study, and then it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, you've got to go step by step, and so I just say that at each step we'll go deeper into the actual calcination, the actual dissolution, the actual separation. It will continue to spiral, and it will mean different things to us as we go through the process. So yeah, that's calcination. Is there any other questions about calcination at the crown chakra? You will burn those things that came to you during that time, and when you have the ashes, you will add the water from the eclipse and mix it. That becomes its closest to original material as you can get it, and then you will give it to the earth. You give it back to the mother for transmutation. Now that's what you will actually do with the ashes. But then when we get to separation, those things that came through from being dissolved, it will I lost my train of thought there. It will go into separation, which is the air element. We're working with fire first, water, and then now when we get to separation, it'll be air, and that will be separating out, like you put all of of the things that you found at the crown chakra, you will put them in, like in a centrifuge. That's what the image is. And it will spin and throw things out that you need to look at for separation.
So from the way that you're describing it, and because you're aligning that step with the air element, it feels like to me that what you're referring to are the ahas that have come out of the calcination and the dissolution around that shadow piece. Is that correct?
Yeah, the ahas will definitely, but you'll be continuing to work on them. Those will be the things that stand out as problem areas, issues, things that you need to go deeper with, and that will continue. So now you will perform the dissolution on your ashes, give them back to earth. That's the end of that, and then calcination will begin at the third eye. So what is it that what keeps us from recognizing and believing that we are capable of receiving guidance from our guides and teachers, that we are receptive to the messages from the unseen that are there to help us? Do you believe, for instance, that only a few gifted people can be clairvoyant, clairaudient, anything clairsentient? Are there only a few people that have this ability? Is it a gift? I believe it is not a gift to a few. I believe we all have this ability, but we can't. There's something in the way. There's something in the way. One of the things that I found with my working with calcination at my third eye is the fact that in past reincarnations, I have shut that down. I have just flat out come to earth without that ability because it wasn't safe. So are in some ways you feeling that by having the ability to see the unseen or feel the unseen or know the unseen, do you feel that that is somehow not safe? In lots of circumstances, it isn't. So that's just one example of the things that you might find. Also, do you have any lingering programming from religion or whatever, from being taught that was not good, that it was actually evil, to that the devil is what is influencing you, or maybe even worse, you think you're schizophrenic or something, because if you hear voices or you hear something, that a mental illness? There are lots of things you don't think about when you're thinking about the third eye, because of our programming. We have all been programmed to accept that this is not a normal thing that humans have, but it is. We can all develop this. We can all see with our third eyes, and we have all been working on that for a long time. I know it's not a new thing for any of us, but those are just some of the things that you could consider when you are thinking about the third eye and blocks to your perception, to your intuition, to your ability to hear your guides. So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much what I don't want to go any deeper right now. That is what you should be considering. I will also make a dissolution list of things that you can consider when you're looking at this, and things that just come up. And again, write them down for your burning bowl. And then those things that's what will go into dissolution at the next step. I mean, prior to the next step, which we will call separation. Okay,
Excellent.
so yeah, is there any questions about that?
Let me stop the
Maureen,
share. Go ahead.
Maureen, I just wondered if you could repeat again about the calcination is fire, dissolution is water, separation is air. Did you say?
Air. Yeah. The study of alchemy is aligned with nature. It is the study of how the forces of nature work. And so each step is associated with an element. And first we work with fire, dissolution, we work with water. And in separation, we work with air.
And then did you say about conjunction, or we're not there yet?
No, that's down the line.
Okay, so right now we're doing fire, water, air. Okay.
Fire, water, and next step will be air.
Okay.
We're not there yet, but that is on the horizon. We will examine. Oh, we'll go there when it's time.
Yeah, we're trying to kind of keep it in bite-sized chunks.
Oh, it's hard. I know.
God.
It's so hard. Because I've just got all these cards spread out before me that I've written all this stuff down, and do I need that one? Do they want to hear that? Do they, have I repeated myself more than I need to? Because last time we was a really long time. We were here 4 hours, and I don't want to, bring you to the point of exhaustion with all this stuff. And I want it to be inspiring you, and for you to be comfortable in the steps and not feel that it's not understandable, because it is. But it is at our level, we get it at a certain point. I mean, this is where we are. Next time we do it, we'll be at a different level. We will continue that deeper exploration. And that's the exciting part about alchemy. We're getting the Philosopher's Stone, although they say the Philosopher's Stone will always remain around the corner. It's something we seek, but we'll never truly grasp in our lifetime, because it's just not possible. But we can do a lot. We can do a lot while we're here.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the slides. Thank you, Helen, for your clarifying question.
Yes.
I'm a little tongue-tied.
Oh.
So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to make this transition in terms of the alchemical process and tie it back over to the Mercury synodic cycle, which, as I showed you in last month, is all about alchemy. Even as, I don't know if I showed this slide the last time, I think I did, even the glyph, the astrological glyph for Mercury is encoded with alchemy. But the main thing to understand here are these 4 key events in the Mercury synodic cycle. We are going to be starting another Mercury synodic cycle this month on October 20th. It's the last, and it's the 4th Mercury synodic cycle of this year. As you will see in the next slide, it won't complete this year. It'll complete in January next year. So we will have had 3 complete cycles this year, but this year we're starting a 4th one, and it's this Capricorn cycle that is a part of this Earth elemental year. So everything with the alchemy of Mercury ties into these 3 events: the evening elongation, the inferior conjunction, and the morning elongation. Now, as a bridge, Maureen has been talking about how Carl Jung did 30 plus years of study on alchemy. We discussed last month how he was clearly a hermeticist, and he was working with these 4 phases. Gary P. Caton, who's done this groundbreaking work on the Mercury synodic cycle, because he's working with these 3 events, has eliminated one of the 4 phases. Just want to make that clear. So the phases that he's working with in relationship to these 3 events are these 3 phases: the Negretto, the Albedo, and the Rubedo, which is basically the black phase, the white phase, the red phase. The 4th phase that he's eliminated is the yellow phase, and I don't really remember the name of that. Now, just for your own purposes, these are the dates of when these cosmic events are going to happen in the sky. December 4th, December 22nd, that's the winter solstice, and January 12th. The most significant event of the entire 4 events of the Mercury synodic cycle is this inferior conjunction, the albedo. Everything that you're going to learn about the Mercury synodic cycle, absolutely everything, ties back to this inferior conjunction, which by now hopefully you understand is when Mercury retrograde and the sun come together below the horizon in the underworld. That's why it's called inferior conjunction. Now, not only did Gary Caton ascribe each of these events to each of these phases of alchemy, he ascribed them to Joseph Campbell's 3 parts of the hero's journey, which are the departure, he calls it separation. Please don't confuse this word separation with one of the 7 steps that's known as separation. This has to do with the departure, initiation, and return. And so it behooves me to share with you at this point why he has aligned these events with those parts of the hero's journey, because it's important for when we're looking at what's happening with the Harry Potter movies, so that we can understand and we can see what's happening alchemically in the story. So at the evening elongation, Mercury has stationed retrograde and is beginning to fall below the horizon. With the hero's journey, you have 2 worlds. You have the regular world that you live in every day, and then you have the other world. And it's in the other world that all the alchemical stuff happens. And sometimes you take allies from the regular world with you into the other world, and sometimes you acquire allies in the other world who have these special gifts and skills that can help you in the other mystical, magical world. So in Mercury, everything above the horizon that's happening is considered the regular world. Everything that's happening below the horizon in the underworld is considered the other world. So the evening elongation event is happening just before, on the western horizon, just before the sun drops, just before Mercury leaves the regular world, leaves from being above the horizon to entering the other world. He drops into the underworld. So that's what separation is all about. Departure. You're leaving the regular world to go into the other world. In the inferior conjunction, the next part is the initiation. It's the initiating event in the other mystical world, in this example of the underworld, that starts the alchemical process. Okay. And then by the time you go through this whole alchemical journey, then the morning elongation is when Mercury has come out of the underworld and rises above the horizon. When it rises above the horizon, it has made its return to the regular world. And so there is a clear demarcation between you left that other world, magical world, and have come back into your regular life, right? Your regular world. But when you come back, you're completely transformed. You're not the person you were when you left and went into the other world. So to give you a really quick example, and I'm going to stop the share here so that I can see you as I'm describing this. Your most recent experience with departure, initiation, and return was that week that we spent together here in my home in that immersive breath retreat. Okay. The departure. You left your home to fly to Orlando, Florida. That was the departure. You left your home. You came to my home, which was the location of the other world. Okay. The initiation was when we had the fire ceremony Sunday night to mark that metamorphic seed point where the Capricorn goddess became the Leo goddess. That was the initiation. And then, of course, that whole week was highly alchemical. And of course, a lot of shadow stuff was coming up to be processed through that alchemical journey. And then the return was when you left Orlando to fly back home. It was either on Saturday or Sunday, whenever you left. But when you went back home, you had definitely been changed by what had happened during that immersive breath week. Now, I know Nicole and Helen weren't here, but Maureen and Karen were here. And so first I'm going to ask Maureen to share your thoughts around my description of that process, those stages of alchemy related to the hero's journey. And then Karen, if there's anything coming up for you, I'd like for you to share, because remember, this is a conversation. So how does that sound to you, Maureen? Is that on point, or is there something else you'd like to add to that?
No, that sounds about right. The only thing I would add is my first experience with breath, prana. Well, my second experience, actually, because as we went into it more, each level would have been different. We only did it twice, I think. No, we did it 3 times. You had 3 sessions of breath. 4?
4.
Yeah, we were going to have 5.
We were going to have 5, but I think, did we have 3 or did we have 4, Karen? We had 3.
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
second one.
Interesting. The number 3.
Yes, because the second one was so hot. Oh, okay. All right. Excuse me. My husband has to get his jacket. The second time was so difficult and uncomfortable that I was totally prepared to exit the process. And you will find that you very much will feel like that along the way. You will say, I can't touch that. That's too much pain. That's too hard. That's what will happen. And so when the third one came, I pulled back because I couldn't deal with what I had felt. And that's when Sophia Mona Lisa decided that that's enough. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do another one because it was plenty. That was also part of the initiation. Yeah.
And so I love that you brought up the breath work, because from my perspective, what you're sharing goes back and speaks to cycles within cycles.
Mhm.
because the three events as I described them would be like an overarching cycle. And then as you tap into the breath work, the 3 breath sessions themselves would tap into another cycle.
Mhm.
And actually, because the breath work is so transformative, each breath session itself is another cycle.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of humorous because we all got cold. Sophia Mona Lisa told us that our temperature might drop. And oh, I was expecting maybe my hands would feel a little chilly, or maybe my feet. I wasn't too concerned, but I was a block of ice. I have never experienced being that cold ever. And I could not move, or I'd probably run out if I could. I was just absolutely frozen. And when we came out of it, finally, I just looked at her. I said, "Don't do that to me again." It was just unbelievable. And she said, Sophia Mona Lisa says, "Well, now, you're connected, you're embodied more than you ever have been." And I'm going, "I don't care. I don't want to feel that." It was just really something else. And the next time we came in, we all had blankets and socks. We'd put on layers of clothes. And I said, it seems almost like we're at base camp at Mount Everest. I mean, we were prepared. And of course, it didn't happen because none of us were going to able to go quite that deep again.
Yeah, there was a lot of resistance to letting themselves go.
Big time. It was so, yeah.
And what's really important to illustrate from that experience that you had from the second one is that you clearly, demonstrably, understandingly knew, although you may not have had the verbiage for it, left the real world and entered the other world. And then you came back to the real world again.
Not wanting to go into the other world ever again. And I think that's that's going to happen if you haven't already experienced it. You will within this process. It's called the Negretto, the dark night of the soul, the blackest part of the cycle. You will feel it. Yeah.
Which is why when we were in France, I found myself saying, I didn't pay $5,000 to come to France to experience this.
Yes, that's exactly the same kind of thing, isn't it? We go, no, this is wrong. I'm not going to take this anymore.
Karen, how was your experience, and how are you able now to see that experience through this alchemical process in these 3 phases, the return, the initiation, the departure, the initiation, and the return?
I'm not really quite sure how to put it into words, except what I observed about myself is that I have been pushing myself all my life, just kind of pushing myself through life, not in my body, not really paying attention to a lot of things. As a consequence, I fell before I got there, injured myself, and it was literally excruciating to even try to breathe because of my right lung. I don't even know what I was thinking. I probably shouldn't have done the breathing at all. But I learned a lot about myself in the whole process. I definitely got back in my body to a large degree and became aware of some things that have bothered me for a long time that I wasn't really paying attention to and didn't know how to put words to it. And then when I got home, that's when it's like I'm back here. I was definitely in another world while I was at your place. That there was definitely that feature. But then when I came home, I was definitely different in more than one way. And since then, I've just felt a real strong need to continue my inner work but I've had to really set a lot of limits on interactions that I can't handle too much external stimulation because of the concussion. And it was definitely, I can see how it does fit within this model that you're outlining.
Yeah. And now that we've had this discussion, this awareness heightening, you'll start to get insights and ahas about, oh, okay, now I get that, what that was about.
Yeah.
And this discussion will help you to, as you watch the Harry Potter movies, each one individually, start to see what's happening through a different lens. You'll have a
I'm
different
kind of excited.
perception, right? At this portal perception activation. So, okay, thank you for sharing that, both of you. Let me get back to the slides because I am aware of the time. But I felt it was important to explain this connection between the alchemical phases with the events of the Mercury synodic cycle and these stages of the hero's journey, as Gary Caton has aligned them. And you may want to come back to this slide, which I will post later, to mark these events. Okay, so here we are. I had put that little post up. You may want to watch this first movie as we're getting ready to talk about these, those three phases: the Negretto, the Albedo, the Rubido, right? The departure, the initiation, the return, relative to these movies. Now, let me say that those three phases are very obvious in terms of Harry Potter himself, because it is a Harry Potter movie, and each one of the characters over the course of the stories and within each movie go through their own alchemical process. And if it intrigues you, or it may jump out at you, you may want to make notes around that. What's clear to me is that Harry doesn't even realize that he already has allies that will be joining him in the other world. And those allies are Hagrid, Dumbledore, and McGonagall. And then when he's in the other world, he acquires two new allies, Hermione and Ron. Now, when I was looking for this movie to watch, I kept looking for the Philosopher's Stone, and I kept seeing the Sorcerer's Stone, and I'm thinking, am I having a Mandela effect experience? But I will let Maureen step forward now and explain how this is not a Mandela effect experience, and I will have her talk to you about her perception for Harry over that whole movie, what the departure, the initiation, and the return events were. So go ahead, Maureen.
Oh, okay. They changed the name for the American audience from the Philosopher's Stone, which makes a lot of sense once you see the movie, because in America we don't think of philosopher as a particularly magic thing. It's a study, but that's about it. Maybe in school we go into it a little bit, but when it came to America, the publisher Scholastic wanted to show a more magical touch, and the only way they could do that would be to change the philosopher to the sorcerer. Then felt that the American audience would understand that there was a magical component to this story. That magic was very much part of it. Indeed, it's everything. But we wouldn't have understood that with just that title. We hadn't heard much about the Philosopher's Stone. So they changed the title for that reason. And the departure, the separation, to me came when Harry was in the cabin on the rock in the middle of a sea of chaos and storm. and it was his birthday. And everybody in the family were asleep, and they had brought him here because they didn't want him to become or learn the skill of a wizard. They believed it was evil. And so he was lying on the floor. Dudley was on the couch, and the two parents were upstairs. And he was drawing a birthday cake in the dirt on the floor. And that's a very black moment for him, because nobody cares it's his birthday. Nobody pays attention to the fact that he's turning 11 until Hagrid bangs in the door. And Hagrid begins to explain exactly what Harry is. And Harry is going, I can't be a wizard. I'm just Harry. I'm just Harry. And he said, well, just Harry. And he begins to explain things that he might have experienced that were in fact magic that he didn't realize he was doing. And so he becomes, yeah, I'm a wizard. Okay. And so he gets his letter, and he reads he's been accepted to Hogwarts, and Hagrid is going to take him to Hogwarts and help him get ready. But it gives him a choice here. He said, you can either go with me or you can stay. Harry has a choice, and he chooses to go with Hagrid. That's the separation point. So any other ahas around the separation point?
I think that scene clearly is the definitive departure stage of the hero's journey. Let me stop the share. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share around that, or their newfound understanding around that stage?
I just want to mention that when you showed those two covers, I don't know if any of you noticed, but there's a distinctive, energetic, vibrational difference. When I see the Philosopher's Stone, it feels right. When I see the word Sorcerer's Stone, it's like the deep state, satanic. They're trying to portray it as something dark, and it just really irritated me when I saw that. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm going to validate that for this reason. At the time that movie came out, I was teaching at a private Christian Protestant school. I won't say which religion because I don't want to cast aspersions. And I will tell you that church and all of its members were up in arms over this movie because they thought it was evil. They thought it was the devil's work, and the parents didn't want their kids seeing it. It was a big hoopla. And so I am in agreement with you in terms of, while they may not have thought that the Americans were intelligent enough to understand that the Philosopher's Stones was related to alchemy, and so they changed it to Sorcerer's Stone, I do think that was a cover, a misdirection for a more evil intention, agenda, as we can see now in hindsight, looking back in terms of what has transpired in our nation. Sorry, I got a little on my soapbox there, but
All right.
But yes, there is definitely a shift in frequency. It definitely had an agenda, and I personally experienced seeing the manifestation of that agenda at work.
I just want to add that there's power in words, and by them just changing that word from philosopher to sorcerer, it put a negative connotation on it, where the Philosopher's Stone is about a journey. Sorcerers are connected with darkness, right? and evil intents. And I think it's very fascinating that they would change it to Sorcerer's Stone in the United States and not leave it the way it was. That's just, it says a lot.
Yeah, it certainly shows a predisposition or pre-knowledge of what the path that our nation was going to be led down to, and already seeding those black magic frequencies.
Yeah. And it was just not, it was the world. This was a worldwide phenomenon. It went so viral that it became a part of our culture. It was amazing.
When I was in India
Mhm.
at the time, where you could barely keep the power on throughout the day, people were queuing up in cafes to watch for the release of the next novel. Now, I don't remember which specific novel, but this speaks to the global implications in a third world country. Like I said, in the back villages, not even in the big cities, that didn't have regular power, didn't have regular access to phones and faxes, waiting for the release of that next novel.
Exactly. Yes. And it is amazing to me, and I've never gotten over it, that when the 7th book came out, everybody in the world got it on the same day at midnight, their time zone. It was available to them, everyone in the world, and they did it. I mean, they absolutely did it. They did that so that everybody would have a chance to read it before all the information started coming online. I wouldn't even open, my computer or phone or anything on that day. I wasn't going to have anything spoil that for me. And I went down and got it at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was there in my box, and I'm giving out a hoot, and I'm, echoing all over the entire post office. I was so excited. I couldn't stand it. And everyone in the world had that experience. Just absolutely blew my mind they could do that. 10 years. I journeyed with that woman and her books for 10 years. It was such an incredible experience to be there live during that, to feel that come to us through her. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant.
So is everyone clear on what this departure is about and what it can look like to signal that this departure is getting ready to happen or has happened? Okay. So the next thing then is the initiation. You want to speak to that, Maureen?
Yeah, I see the initiation beginning as it's supposed to in the boats. All the first years get in the boats and come across the water because they can see Hogwarts in all its majesty at that point. And they're all absolutely enthralled with this vision of Hogwarts at night with all the lights blazing, and it's such an impressive sight. And that's his "we're not in Kansas anymore" experience, and he is loving it. But he gets to he walked up the stairs and you're at the door to the Great Hall, and all the first years are standing together, and McGonagall comes out and leads them in, and they are sorted. And this is to me, the initiation begins when he is assigned to Gryffindor. And that's when I see it all starting. The albedo. Yeah.
And I would agree with that too. That's clearly the initiation point, because everything that happens after that is founded on the fact that his experiences are a part of, that he and Ron and Hermione are in this Gryffindor house. And what I also recognized, because he does bring these allies in with him that he doesn't realize have been there with him all his life, Hagrid, McGonagall, and Dumbledore, is each time there is one of these major phases like this initiation, what happens is there's a scene where Harry and one of these allies has this eye to eye, knowing acknowledgement point. And when Harry sits down at the Gryffindor table, there is a quick scene where he looks over at Dumbledore, and I think Dumbledore raises his glass to him, and they kind of give each other the knowing look.
And of course, Dumbledore knows the whole story at this point.
Yeah.
He knows everything, and he's giving out in pieces to Harry as Harry can take them.
Yeah. And finally, the return.
Yeah, this is where we see things a little differently, and that's okay. You're gonna maybe see it differently also, and that there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong. But to me, the return is when the encounter with Voldemort has ended, and he is taken to the hospital. And in the hospital, he wakes up and Dumbledore is there, and they have an exchange where he is given some information about what has happened, and his issues with, not the whole story, of course, but that Voldemort is a nemesis, and that Harry had been successful in overcoming that first encounter, and why he had been successful. The love of his mother had protected him. And so that to me is the return. He returns to the world a changed person. And I know that Sophia Mona Lisa sees that a little differently.
So the way, and while I acknowledge and validate what Maureen is seeing, the way that I see it different is this whole overriding cycle. I call it the wizardry lineage cycle, where he finds out at the departure that he is a wizard. He finds out from the aunt before Hagrid shows up, you know, how they feel about the fact that his parents were wizards and have kept everything about them secret from him. The fact that his parents at the initiation are Gryffindors. That's part of his wizardry lineage. And then to me, the return for him from this overarching cycle of the wizardry lineage is when they're standing next to the Hogwarts Express and he's saying goodbye to Hagrid. And Hagrid does two things. One, he gives him a photo book of Harry as a baby with his parents, again, acknowledging his wizardry lineage. And then he makes this offhand remark about Dudley. And if Dudley gives you any more problems, tell him you're going to give him some ears to go with that tail, referring to the family in the other world that is not a part of this magical world. And then when he steps up onto the train and Hermione says something, it's time to go home now. And Harry says, I'm not really going home. He's returning to the ordinary world, but he's so changed that the Hogwarts world is now his new home. And so to me, that completes that cycle. The piece that Maureen is referring to in the hospital relates to one of the other two cycles happening within the big cycle. Because it's about his wizardry lineage, I see a piece that's about his father and his lineage and about his mother and his mother's lineage. And I can share that with you at some other time if you're interested. But the piece that Maureen sees as the return, for me, is the return related to the cycle around his mother's lineage. But it'll be fascinating for each of you to watch it if you haven't already, to see what you identify. You may identify pieces that didn't become obvious to us. And I saw cycles around Hermione and Ron that we won't take the time to discuss now, but you may see cycles around other characters within that movie that may become obvious to you. So it'll be very interesting to hear from you what it is that you see. And Karen, if you did watch it recently, or Helen and Nicole, if there's anything about those three big pieces related to Harry that you're aware of that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Can't hear you, Karen.
I didn't watch the whole thing yet, so I'm going to start fresh
Okay,
with this information and have some fun.
good. Any questions about the departure, which Gary Caton calls in the Mercury synodic cycle, the Negretto, the initiation, which he aligns with the inferior conjunction, and the return, which is the morning elongation event. It's important to understand these because starting next month, I'm going to give you the information that Gary shares around the evening elongation in the Negretto. And then in December, I will give you the information that Gary gives about the albedo, the inferior conjunction. And then in January, when the last event happens, I'll give you the information he shares around the rubido and the the morning elongation, so that we're kind of transitioning into the alchemy about what's happening with us through the Leo goddess journey, what's happening with us at each chakra, to what's happening with these stages in terms of Mercury as the cosmic messenger, where we are becoming alchemized, aligned at least 3 times a year through that inferior conjunction point. So it's going to be important to understand how Gary P. Caton ascribes those phases to those events. And I think by doing this whole Harry Potter piece, it'll help you to kind of transition into seeing that in a different way. Does that make sense? Okay, let me go back to the slides. We're almost done. And so then if you can catch up, as I discussed earlier, Maureen and I talked about going through this process at each chakra with each of the subsequent movies. So if you can do that first one, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, plus Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and just look at these through these 3 big phases, and anything else that pops out to you, make notes of, because it would be great for the discussion, especially if we've all watched it and we can tap into what it is that you're referring to. So that will be the next movie in terms of this portal's activation. And then we've done a lot of questions and answers. Let me just stop the share one more time. Any final questions about anything that we've discussed? Anybody have any questions for Maureen to clarify anything? Okay. And so I just want to remind everybody that the 16th strand of DNA activation is coming online next month with the November 9th gate activation, which is at the throat chakra, known as the portal of communication. While the actual event in the sky is happening on November 9th, we will be having the ceremony on November 12th. And finally, as far as the whole replay goes, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that will be watching this as a replay. Thank you to Maureen, Nicole, Karen, Helen, for all of your contribution to the conversation around this new teaching. It's been incredible. And with that, we will see you next month. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for the replay now.